Hey Donna, how are you? Whoops, I'll turn video on. There you go. You guys are all muted.
Yeah,
Are we really going to end up with a quorum?
yes, we better.
We do have a quorum and we just keep it muted until 5 because it's already streaming on YouTube. And so that people
Okay.
aren't confused what's going on. But we can hear you perfect. So thanks for getting on early.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and if you can't hear anybody, make sure to let them know. Call them out
Yeah,
on it.
I'll yell at them.
All right, thanks, Robert. Robert online? Yep. And then Megan is here she's gonna share her presentation through the Zoom on her computer, so you don't need to pay attention to that one. And that looks like it so far.
Oh, that's such a good idea, because then that way it's right here. If she
Yes.
shares her,
That's what I've been doing too. It's just easier than trying to connect to the system. I just go on Zoom.
oh. That's pretty cool.
Sandy. Your glasses.
At 5 o'clock. Hereby call to order the October 21st, 2021 Town of Frisco Planning Commission meeting. Cheryl, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Withrow,
Here.
Commissioner Stabile.
Here.
Commissioner Tain,
Here.
Commissioner Scupian,
Here.
Commissioner Lesnes,
Here.
Commissioner Franken,
Here.
Commissioner Gleason is absent.
Thank you, Cheryl. And just a reminder to lean into your microphones so that everybody online can hear us. Cheryl distributed the meeting minutes from October 7th, 2021. Does anybody have any comments or corrections?
I move them.
Second.
Andy seconds that. All in favor? All right, moving on. At this time, we will open the floor up to public comment. If there are any members of the public here that would like to speak to anything that is not on tonight's agenda item, now is your time. If you are online, please raise your hand. If you are in the audience, please step up to the podium, state your name, address, and keep it to 3 minutes.
No one raising hands.
Looks like we have no public comments, so we will close the public comment portion of tonight's meeting and move on to agenda item number 1, planning file number MAJ-21-0008, a review of the sketch plan step of the major site plan application for a proposed multi-purpose recreation building located at 616 Recreation Way, TR5-78, Section 36, Quarter 2, Peninsula Recreation Area. Applicant Olson Lavoie, sorry if I butchered that, corporation representing the town of Frisco. I will turn it over to Katie.
So as a reminder for you, this is the sketch plan. So it's the first step of the major site plan. You're not going to make a formal vote, but it is the opportunity for the applicant to hear the planning commissioner's feedback on what they are proposing so far. As you know, it's going to be based on relation to the Unified Development Code. This is a little bit unique in a way. It's the town project. So I did just want to remind you that the matters such as financial cost, function of the structure, siting on the site, that is all with the town council decisions. So we're really just reminding you to make sure you're looking at it in connection to the Unified Development Code, which is what you always review projects based on. David Sprague is here with Olson Lavoie Corporation. He has been the lead architect on the project. And then Diane McBride and Katie Barton with the Town Recreation Department and Susan Lee with the Community Development Department have taken the town's lead on meeting with OLC and the town council. So in your staff report, you notice kind of an extensive background on meetings that have occurred. The 3 town staff I mentioned have been involved in all of those. So you can, if you're interested in hearing more background, you can touch with them when it comes time to ask the applicant for questions, and they'll be able to assist you with that. As you noted, it's noted in the staff report, this project is also kind of noted in the Frisco Adventure Park Comprehensive Vision and Project Implementation Plan. In that plan is where the town has the direction and guidance to move forward with this project. And that includes why it's being proposed where it is and also what's being proposed. So one thing to note is that the town is looking to build this project, not necessarily to provide new uses, but to redistribute uses that already occur at the PRA site and that really don't have a lot of space or aren't functioning as well as they could be. And the Recreation Department will give a little bit of an overview of that if you're interested in it. So the community plan was also referenced and sections were bolded for you to comment on if you would like to discuss. Those included quality core services, vibrant recreation, and sustainable environment. And I'm gonna just kind of scroll through the staff report as I do this because there are a few topics that staff was hoping the Planning Commission could provide more feedback on tonight for the applicant. And I think it'll be easier as I talk to have them up on the screen in front of you also. So just bear with me as I scroll through a little bit. And the first thing I wanted to note was the height for the PR district. So in the PR zoning district, the height is 25 feet for the maximum building height. However, there is a section in the code that states upon Planning Commission approval, a maximum height up to 35 feet may be permitted when necessary to accommodate special recreation specific needs and when the following criteria are met, which you saw, so I won't read all of it. So the applicant, we haven't seen the exact height measurements based on how we require height to be measured, but it appears to be probably between about 32 to 34 feet. So they are allowed to do maximum of 35 feet if the Planning Commission finds they're meeting those criteria. So that is one thing that this would be a good opportunity at sketch plan to provide feedback on as far as building height goes. Moving on to parking, as I stated, it's a little unique that they're not necessarily proposing new uses. They're looking to redistribute uses. The reason that this is unique is because our parking requirements, basically, this type of use is unlisted. And so it's basically up to the Planning Commission because you're reviewing the major site plan. So the applicant has stated that there is adequate parking available. They're not providing new uses, therefore they don't need new parking or additional parking proposed. But because it's up to the Planning Commission, this is a good opportunity at sketch plan to provide comments if you feel that there is parking sufficient or if you think the applicant needs to provide further parking. A lot of parking information was provided through the whole analysis in that Frisco Adventure Park plan. And parking will be provided in the future, just not at this time. And there is one proposed parking space, which is proposed on the aerial photo. You can, let me move into it. I'll show you on the site plan in a little bit, but I think you all saw it off of the emergency turnaround on the emergency access behind the building. And that's for functionality of using for the new building for anybody who needs an accessible space. So because if there's no new parking required, then technically we don't require more accessible parking spaces or EV chargers. So just kind of keep that in mind that everything will stay as it is for parking, with the exception of the one additional accessible space that's being proposed. And town staff who works in the Recreation Department is very confident there's adequate parking, and they're the ones who are out there every day. So planning staff supports this, but again, it's up to the Planning Commission to discuss and decide on that. Bicycle parking will be finalized at the time of final site plan review. Basically, a lot of what's out there will be relocated to the new building to meet the requirements for bicycle parking that are in the town code. The next one that's a little bit unique for this project because it's a public project is landscaping. So similar to parking, this is a project that's undertaken by the town. And so the Planning Commission actually gets to determine, or the town, so in our staff would like Planning Commission to do this, determine if the landscaping is adequate. So staff is recommending Planning Commission provide feedback on the proposed landscape plan, specifically related to the quantity and the types of plantings. And if you think that's what they're proposing around the new building is sufficient. And all of these discussion items that I'm kind of noting for you are all at the end of the staff report in the final bullets. So if any of you have the staff report with you, you can zoom into that also. Moving down to non-residential development standards. As always, it's great opportunity for the planning commission to provide feedback on the overall architectural character. The one part that is going to need extra discussion from planning staff's point of view is going to be the building articulation. So for the west facade, they are not quite meeting the standard that building walls and corresponding eaves shall not exceed 27 feet in the same geometric plane. That's letter A is connected to letter C, which is building walls exceeding 54 feet and total building facade length shall change geometric planes by at least 4 feet in depth for a minimum length of 6 feet. And this is, I know we've talked about this in other planning items. This is a part of the code that staff would like to revise and make clear in the future. But at this point, they are not meeting that at the west facade. If the planning commission was to allow an administrative adjustment, that could be utilized for this articulation standard, and it would then be able to be approved. So tonight's a good opportunity to say if you support the administrative adjustment request for that west facade, or if you think that they need to come into conformance with this language as the code writes it. And the building articulation, or I'm sorry, the administrative adjustment criteria is outlined in the staff report for you. Basically, it's consistent with the purpose statement set forth in the zone chapters of the zoning district, which this is, meets all other applicable building and safety codes, which this does. And then your extra is the and if you look at number 3B, accommodate an alternative or innovative design practice that achieves to the same or better degree the objective of the existing design standard to be modified. That's the section that the applicant has put in their narrative that they're looking to have you approve based on that criteria. So you're not approving it tonight, you're just letting them know if that's something you would support or if they need to redesign that west wall. And the last bit I'm gonna highlight from the staff report is on the actual building materials that are proposed. As you saw in the materials that were submitted, the proposed material is for the structure is fiber cement siding, synthetic corten panel, and metal roofing primarily. That is a little bit different than what the planning commission in town sees on a lot of our buildings, so we just request you provide feedback on that also. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know it was a longer staff report and I only focused in on the items that I wanted to make sure you discussed, but if you have any other questions, let me know.
Thank you, Katie. We'll start with you, Lena. Questions for staff?
Okay, I got confused with the articulation standard. Is that, did you say only the one wall is?
Correct.
And-
Only that the west wall where it's bubbled in here. And so they're proposing 37 feet. The limit without an administrative adjustment is 27 feet. And with an administrative adjustment, they can go up to 47 feet. And the reason is this here is not 6 feet. And if this was 6 feet, then that would help it comply. And the applicant, the architect can discuss more about their reasoning for this too for you.
So you're allowed to go 27 feet and then you have to do a 2-foot break?
6 foot, break. Sorry, 4 feet, 4 foot in depth, 6 foot in length,
Okay,
So that 2-foot dimension would need to be 4.
4 feet, correct.
but with the administrative adjustment, you can go up to the 37, but then what happens to the depth?
They basically can do what they're proposing.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And I guess curious, because you said it, why do you want to clarify that language?
I think like if you read the code section, staff actually, I think we had 3 internal discussions trying to understand the code language. So, I mean, they seem like they contradict each other to an extent, and we ran into the same problem recently on a couple other private developer projects. So we just feel like we shouldn't be stumbling this up much over how to interpret that part of the code.
Got it.
And it seems like a code, we end up giving administrative adjustments for a law.
Correct.
So if we're gonna do that, maybe we could.
And can you go over the landscaping
Yeah.
thing?
So public projects, they don't have to follow the land use code necessarily for, normally we say how big is the project site, and then we require a certain amount of trees and a certain amount of variation in trees. Now it's really just whatever the town supports and approves. This was also done at the transit center where they didn't have to follow the normal landscaping regs. So it's basically if the planning commission thinks they're providing adequate landscaping, that's all we really need to know.
So these are bonus trees. Basically, they don't need to provide any if they didn't want to.
If the town was okay with that. I think we want some kind of landscaping. in that area.
Okay.
But yes,
All right.
no requirements for them to follow.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, just one clarification, Katie. You mentioned that the bicycle parking requirement was going to be met by pulling bike parking off of the existing building?
That's what the applicant proposed in their narrative. I know where you're going with it is that taking away from what's over there? And we'd have to analyze that based on the amount of spaces, which at least we have the count for, and then base the 20% on that.
And so it's not a site-wide bicycle parking count. We're going to be individually counting each building and making sure there's parking required at each building.
The parking, because they're not requiring new parking, we're basically take the existing parking spaces. So I think there's about 99 saying that to paved area.
Mhm.
So say there's 100, we would make sure there's 20% of that serving the same functions at that 100 paved spaces.
But as far as bicycle parking, we're
Right.
going to make sure that there's bicycle
Then
at
it's
each
20%
building.
of, yes. And actually, I think that's a good comment for the applicant in town to hear. When you get to that, is that if you want to make sure that there's bike storage at each building and not just pull it off of the Nordic Center.
Right.
So that would be a good comment for you to make.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Donna?
Got a few. And when I downloaded everything, I kept trying to think, what was the master plan? And then they added it, so, which was nice. Because I even forgot, I remember the old master plan, so this is like, oh yeah. So I know we're really here for the village center building, but that whole area is connected. So I've got to trying to remember, was the Day Lodge renovation, that was done with the bathrooms and extra offices and stuff?
That was not completed.
It still is not, okay. I couldn't, okay, because I know it was approved, okay.
Expired by now. but I'm not
Was Nordic Center building ever done?
sure. As it always has been. No renovations.
Okay, yeah.
They renovate, only is the yurt in the temporary, like where they ski wax, do the waxing of the skis, things like that.
So the proposal, so now that I'm seeing, when I first was looking at the plans and now seeing the master plan, it makes, a lot more sense. And so when you were saying that future parking might be added, but now by looking at the concept with the big circle of the drop-off area and looking at the master plan idea rendering, if more parking were to be added in the future, it would be off of Recreation Way, kind of where the concept of the master plan is showing
I
it.
think preliminary, that's where it would go, but I think it would be fine tuned potentially. I don't want to say it would be locked in that location. Because
Okay.
as you know, as we start digging into the details sometimes from those master plans, the idea is there, but I can't say 100% it would stay there. But it would be in that vicinity.
Well, and on this sketch plan, it says with the boulder area and potential future, there's a lot of what ifs, and so it's a little hard to make, judge, concrete decisions on some of these things. But with this building and I don't know if you're the appropriate person to hopefully answer these, but there, it shows X amount of offices and X amount of cubicles and all of this. Is that if this is really sort of geared on the fun club activities, how does this building, and even though it says something about community multi-purpose spaces, are a lot of things, like for instance, ticketing from the Day Lodge going to be moved over here?
Not necessarily some of what you brought up, but I think that's going to be a better question for the town representatives to answer.
And just trying to see who's going to answer what. And then just kind of as a side note for this, is there anything, would this interfere, the placement of this building? And probably not, because it was on the master plan. There was talk about Peak School building something over there. Is that still part of all of this?
Wouldn't affect that plan at all.
And then would there be any duplicate things from the proposed future activity center as opposed to village center? Would there be any overlapping of, if this is for activities, then why would there be a proposed activity center unless the purpose of this building changed from the master plan?
And a lot of that will be a little bit different. Another big function of this building is actually office space. Because right now, there's a lot of staff who do not have offices that are adequate. And so I'll let the town representative speak to the uses and proposed future uses. Yeah,
Thank you.
so I think a big chunk of this to keep in mind isn't just fun club, it's also office space for employees.
And then one last question. There was something in the staff report about bulk standards, and therefore Parks and Recreation don't have to adhere to bulk plane?
It's not necessarily they don't have to adhere to it. There are no bulk plane requirements in the zoning district. Yeah, good
All right, thank
question. Sorry, there is at the marina, but not at this property. And it's just the way the town code outlines bulk plane requirements.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Ira, questions for staff?
So my question would be on the parking. It seems to me that there's no extra parking planned at this phase. There may be some more parking coming later, I think is what you said. So are you expecting that this building won't generate more recreational traffic?
Correct. That is the intent, that it's gonna be people who already work on the premises will be now working
Right.
in this building, and the fun club, which is already throughout the property, will be utilizing this building.
Because I would just make a comment that on occasions, more than rare, but on occasions, parking is inadequate.
Yes.
Okay,
I think That's just something to talk to the applicant about, and I do know they recognize probably when there's a special event taking place out there, it gets a little bit limited. But what this building will be used for is not increase, and no one's gonna be coming extra to use this building.
okay. And then if I looked at it correctly, there's 2 floors of office space. It's not a 3-story building.
Correct.
And I guess, you know, I'm okay with the failure to meet the building articulation part. I'm okay with that.
Until comments to provide that feedback, but make sure you say it again when you get to that, when Kelsey asks you for comments.
That's it for now.
Thank you, Ira. Robert, any questions for staff?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. I also do not have questions at this time for staff, so we will turn the floor over to you, David, for your presentation.
Gonna start with the town introducing David.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's great to see each and every one of you this evening. Thanks for having us here. So as Katie was mentioning, the big purpose behind this building has a lot to do with space. The Day Lodge itself was built in 2010. It's 11 years later, and we've realized we've outgrown that space in so many ways. So the purpose behind this building is for a few different things. One, office space, that's been mentioned. If you've had the luxury of touring the Day Lodge, you will see that in the basement of the Day Lodge is where our staff is housed at this point in time. That was originally designed to be temporary space for our staff. It is turned into more of a permanent space whereby every season when the snow melts, there's some nice little flooding that happens in that space. There are some rodents that tend to run around a little bit. So it's definitely in need of getting our staff out of that space. In addition, the first year that we opened up the Tubing Hill, we had just about 20,000 people who came to visit us that year. In our biggest year at the Tubing Hill, we had almost 80,000 visitors who came to visit us just for tubing alone. So the Day Lodge has definitely taken a nice beating, if you will. It gets used for everything. If you've been out there, you've noticed in the wintertime, it gets used for all of the tubing operations, the ski and ride operations. And then the summertime, it gets used for a variety of camps. It also gets used for rentals, private rentals. So the goal of this building is to help alleviate some of the pressure that's being put on the current day lodge. So the community spaces that we've been talking about, yes, you would see Fun Club being in there in the summertime. You also have the ability to partition off each of those rooms. So you could have private rentals in there. You can have, during the winter months, when the tubing operations take place out of the day lodge, you can rent out the other spaces as well. We have a lot of requests for holiday parties. We have a lot of requests for birthday parties, events that at this point in time, we just can't accommodate because we don't have the space. So it really is to look at helping with our staffing that we currently have. It's helping to create these new spaces for all the different programs we operate. We also, since 2010, have added a significant number of youth programs. So it's not just Fun Club, whereby we're bursting at the seams. We've added sports camps. And if any of you have ever tried to register for a sports camp, camp registration opens up in April, and within 2 minutes, all those programs are filled. So there's definitely a need in the community, and we understand the importance of trying to find a space for all of these different programs that we operate. With that, I'll turn it over to David and to Megan, and they'll take it away, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards, as well as Katie is here, who's the general manager, and Susan, who's been part of this project as well. Thank you.
So I believe we're actually going to start with Megan first. She's our landscape architect, and we'll start with the big picture, which is the site, and then we'll talk about.
Thank you, David. Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate your time. I'm going to share my screen. Give it a second to catch up. All right. Thank you. So as David said, I'm going to start a little bit with the big picture. A lot of the planning discussions that we've had with staff have really kind of wavered around how we can fit this building in the right location and also give room for this building to grow should the need happen. We don't want to box ourselves in like what happened with the Day Lodge. So a lot of our planning talked about exactly where we want this. Another kind of hidden thing is that there are a number of utilities running right through this property. I won't get into that, but we've cited this building to be sure to avoid those utilities, which is a huge cost implementation. So that's one of our main goals in the exact location of where this building is. We also worked really closely with the fire department and with our traffic engineer and designer to make sure that we are able to create a safe intersection. And also, again, looking at 2 auxiliary buildings, the function of how the yurt would work with this building, as well as some tube storage. So there's a lot of thought put into the synergies between not only the Nordic Center, which is just north and off of the page here, the existing Day Lodge, which you see down on the bottom, and our proposed new slopeside hall. We have the yurt being relocated to here. For anyone's knowledge, the yurt is currently kind of right about here. So it's not a huge relocation. And then also having some screening and additional planning efforts for the tube storage. I'm going to talk just really briefly about additional planning. What you're seeing right now is focused primarily on this building, because what will be coming in front of you soon is a more thorough site design for this area, which looks at the synergies between the Day Lodge and Slopeside Hall and creating a really nice gathering area between the two. So if you're wondering why our plan just sort of stops right here, that is why. We wanted to make sure that from a grading perspective, we can be 100% sure that we have ADA from the parking lots. We have a new ADA space. We also wanted to have ADA routes from this crosswalk. So we've done a lot of preliminary studies, and we're confident that we can meet those requirements. And right now you get a nice bubble, but next time I see you, there would be a lot more exciting things than just a bubble going on in this space. So I wanted to make sure that I presented that to you right now with this, because I know you are asked to be looking at landscaping and landscape requirements. And what we wanted to make sure we did is provide some nice screening and buffering, particularly from Recreation Way, and then also right around the fire turnaround access. But we also wanted to be cognitive of budget and of the idea that we know that this future plaza is going to be more of a gem. So that is some thought behind the landscape and the site plan, and I will turn it over to David.
Thank you, Megan.
I know this is planning and zoning or planning commission, but I think it's important to understand how the building lays out as well. So we'll briefly just run through the planning exercise. So this is that west elevation that we were talking about. And on the plan, on the site plan, the building's turned at a little bit of an angle, but this is straight up and down. So it's kind of close, but not exact. Megan's screen's really small, so I'm going to need these. So we have two entrances to this building, essentially. This would be your main entrance, which faces out towards the west. And this would accommodate the vast majority of your community users coming in and out of these doors right here. There's also this secondary entrance here that opens off under that drop-off area. And the thing that we didn't really talk about is that's also going to be, we've been in conversation with the fire department, that drop-off area, if you remember it from the site plan, is also an emergency vehicle turnaround as well. So that satisfies our emergency vehicle access to this building as well as functions as a drop-off. This will also be a secondary entrance for staff to come in, especially in the wintertime. So they don't, we're not taking our staff with all coming off the tubing hill with muddy shoes, et cetera, and bringing them in through this front door. So we're really separating those two populations, community users and staff, by having these two entrances. It'll also serve as parent drop-off in the summertime for day camps, fun club, those sorts of activities. So we're not having to take children and drop them off unattended right there on Recreation Way and expect them to find their way to the front door. So it's a lot safer of a drop-off point than even coming from the parking lots that are across Recreation Way. And Megan happens to be a fine user of, will be a fine user of these drop-offs as well. So when you first enter this building here, and we'll just come in the community room, there's a couple of offices that will be able to monitor both activity in the community room, pre-assembly area, that's what this area will be here, as well as there's windows that look into these multipurpose rooms. And these are kind of the multipurpose rooms, classrooms are really sort of the heart and soul of this facility. And they're going to be, you know, Diane mentioned all the different programming needs that are now jammed into the day lodge. They're all going to be moved over here. They're all going to be able to accommodate all the users, hopefully, that we possibly can register in 2 minutes in these rooms here. And they are divisible into 3 separate rooms. So you can have 2 rooms open, all 3 rooms open, or 3 rooms divided up separately. So you have the ability to have multi-use going on simultaneously in each one of these rooms. So we've got about 2,500 square feet of multi-purpose classroom space inside this beige block right here. So if they're, and not to get into the operations too much, but here would be the entrance to one room, here would be the entrance to the other room, and here's the entrance to the third and final room. And then they're served by this kitchen. So, you know, we envision having wedding events here. So we could have a warming kitchen similar to what's over at the Day Lodge, but probably a little bit smaller, something without hood, something without open fire. So it would truly just be a warming kitchen, and we can serve into this room and into this room, both at the same time or individually. So this is sort of a public way all the way through that's going to be dressed very handsomely. And then we have toilet facilities. We don't have true lockering per se. We don't have showers for the public that are going to be attending the sports training events that occur in here, but we do have a couple of small changing rooms right here. So in the event you bring your child, or you're on the tubing hill and you need to, or you're taking a Nordic skiing class, you do have the ability, if you don't come dressed for that particular activity, to use these 2 changing rooms right here. So the men's and women's toilets are really sized to accommodate the assembly space down here. Not any bigger, not any smaller than they need to be. And then these are just support areas. We have a nice storage room here, directly accessible to the meeting rooms, the multipurpose rooms. And this is mechanical space. So this is where all of our boilers and heaters are going to be. This is a stairway that goes up to the upper level offices. So one of the things that we did, we went through a whole bunch of different schemes on this, and we went through some one-story schemes, went through some, and it really became clear after we went through the one-story scheme that both from massing on the site and keeping this building compressed as much as possible, while still providing great views out to the Tubing Hill and to the Nordic Center and to the 10-mile range. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction here, but the second story scheme really made a lot of sense. So as we move upstairs, Megan, do I just click this? There we go. Well, I passed the second floor for some reason. There we go. Got it. This is the second floor. This is where the staff will come upstairs directly off the tubing slope, not interacting with the rest of the users in the facility, and have direct access to their lockers upstairs and a full service changing room, shower, toilet, so they can keep their personal items stored here as well as change and take a shower and clean up. They also have access to this really nice break room here without really interrupting the rest of the staff. These would be the folks coming up off the tubing slope that are staff members that would not be interrupting the rest of the office areas. So these offices are really positioned. So they've got these great views of the tubing slope. So you can monitor from these offices out onto the tubing slope. Great views out onto the Great Lawn and the 10-mile range. And then the northern offices have views of the Nordic Center, of course. So they've got these great panoramic views all the way around. And that really helps for, especially over here, monitoring the tubing slope from these offices right here. So the elevator, we will have occasions. We do have to provide an elevator because of ADA. Probably won't be used a lot, but we do in case we have this thing's really touchy, Megan. In case we have a need for accessibility from an employee standpoint as well. So there will be an overview here into the lobby space, looking out over the entry. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 private offices. And then we've got this group of cubbies, and then a central copy area and a break room. This is actually going to be, it's called storage right now, but there's going to be these internalized mechanical units. We are going to have no mechanical units on the roof anywhere on this building. So no screening of those is going to be required. So, and just if you want to interrupt me as going through this, hey, how many questions? Go ahead. Nothing? Okay. Roof plan here.
I'll go back a second.
Okay, to the plan.
Well, HVAC, that's going to be internal. Is that a forced air system that you're proposing?
It's what we're going to have is we're going to have radiant heat in the floors, and then we're going to have the code required air turnover with these remote units that are going to be sprinkled around in the ceiling plenum space.
Okay. And just one, going back to the elevator, it sounded like it's going to be used only with staff helping. I mean, or is it open to the public all the time?
It could be if public needs to get up there, but I believe it's probably, we have the ability to keep it open. And if you look at this plan, if the public does need to get up there, this is a little balcony up there that looks out over this 2-story lobby space. But we have a door here. So operationally, that door could be locked off and the public wouldn't have any access to anything up there. It could be open. It depends just operationally how staff wants to use it.
Okay.
And why don't we just hold our questions? I appreciate you opening the
Sure.
floor, but just for time management, hold our questions. We will have the opportunity. To do
Okay.
that.
Roof plan. Lots of dormers, high vaulted area. This is the office right here. We've got some dormers that face out towards the north and south. So we're going to have those offices upstairs. We'll have that high volume articulated inside the space. So there'll be a lot of nice natural light coming in. We're going to have operable windows in there. So we'll have natural ventilation. And then these roofs down here are the ones that enclose the multipurpose rooms down below. And you can see some articulation to those roof lines as well through dormers and different roof forms along the perimeter articulation that follows the wall articulation. The colors and materials, the development code standards state natural materials or something that represents or looks like natural or assimilates. I can't remember exactly the exact words, but so what we are planning to do is to use a very durable material that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. And a lot of this you'll see is on the elevations is this fiber cement siding, and we will stain that a color that you see right there on number 1 to look like natural cedar siding. That's the idea. And then synthetic Core 10 panels. I know there's some Core 10 buildings right downtown here. They can get very messy at times. And so we're proposing the use of a synthetic material that requires no maintenance whatsoever. Although Core 10 says there's no maintenance, you've got the maintenance around where it splatters on your surface on the ground or on your sidewalks. Clear glass with powder coated aluminum frames that we're envisioning matching the standing seam siding on the roof. You can see the standing seam siding over here. And then a dry stack stone veneer that's got some of those same colors in it, the charcoals, the beiges, the buffs, and the sort of the cedar color from the siding as well. And then trim paints over here. And then a stain, and can't really see the whole thing, but because the way the setup is here, but there's a stain color there. And there's also a trim color. So we're going to have some exposed trusses in the building and outside the building. And there's just going to be some exposed timber out there. We're going to have wood construction on this building. So we're thinking things like gusset plates, handrails, those types of things would receive this charcoal colored paint. So very natural. So the top elevation is the entry elevation. And this is the elevation that's in question about meeting the articulation of the walls. And as you see, we've done a lot with the roof lines, and the code really addresses kind of what's happening on the ground, but it doesn't really address what's happening up above. And we've really tried to articulate the walls and break down the massing on that particular facade through this sort of progression and hierarchy of lower roof here, which is an overhang, especially here, the projection out of the vestibule. And then this would be the area over that 2-story lobby space. So that's another level of breaking down of the massing. And then the offices beyond right here. And you can see that high glass that's going to be articulated and evident inside the building as well. These little pieces right here is what we envision the Core 10 to be. And then these masses down here, you see the stone used in large planes. And then also on these columns that run along the front of the building as well. And then this roof line is that roof line in the back over the multi-purpose rooms. It's also a dormer element. So then, and if I'm going too slow, just tell me to pick it up a little bit. We walk around the building to the left. These are the toilet rooms. We have some high glass in the toilet rooms to allow a lot of natural light in. The idea is to really illuminate this space, and it really helps with the energy codes to illuminate the space with natural daylight as much as possible. This is the break room right here. This is the standing seam over that high roof. And this is the entry element over here. So you can kind of see these wood columns that splay out, and then those will have steel gusset plates that will be painted in that charcoal color. This little element here is the protective element over that secondary entrance. Then continuing to move around, this is the stairwell, and it's pretty much completely clad in stone and presents a very nice vertical element on the east side of the building. And again, windows that look into that stairwell, offices up above with the dormers. And then this is the first multi-purpose room right here. So this has that core 10, faux core 10 material as well, flanked by 2 stone side elements. And that core 10 element, as you may remember, sort of projects out at you. And then moving to the final elevation, should have a real mouse here. This is the south elevation. So these are looking at the multi-purpose rooms on this first level, right down here. So the standing seam roof, this element is that central meeting room, and it actually pushes back. And really, that element satisfies that wall articulation piece of the code. And then offices up above. And then there's some mechanical, internalized mechanical units in this space right here. So those are the elevations. And then just quickly walking around some 3Ds that we've done. This is the entry piece. And again, this is that west elevation. And we believe we've really done the job. We're hopeful that we've done the job of articulating that wall to the satisfaction of the code. You see this overhang here that pretty much wraps around the building as a base. The use of the stone. This is over the lobby. These are the offices. And then this is the locker rooms right here. And we're suggesting maybe some seating underneath this overhang as well. Walking around the building, this is the stairwell. This is looking at it from the northeast. Imagine you're coming down Recreation Way from Highway 9 and you're coming down that hill. This would be what you would really see. Maybe not from that high of an angle, but this would be the view you would have. So the secondary entrance right here, upper level offices, and then the first multi-purpose room here. And you can see how that projects out and then frames this opening here. We're considering having some sort of an large operable window here that may roll up. And so we can have that as an open environment as well in certain times where we can just open that up and we have an indoor-outdoor experience. And then the final view, this is from the southwest. This would be as you're looking from the day lodge pretty much, and shows that articulation of that west wall again. And then that colonnade that runs across the front of the building. These are the offices that are back off that pre-function room. And then this is the first room, the first multi-purpose room on the west side. And you can see we've got these doors here, and you'll be able to, in the summertime, open those up and have that indoor-outdoor experience and have tables and chairs. You can have, if you're having a community event there or a wedding, any number of different rental opportunities here for these rooms. This can be what we call spill out space, where you can actually have this an indoor-outdoor event. And I think that's it for the building.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
And we will open the floor to questions for the applicant team. I'm going to start with Robert online.
Oops. I have just 2 questions, I think. One, is this building going to have solar on it? I don't see solar on it. The town has a sustainable a sustainable goal, and we encourage other people to do it. I'm trying to figure out why the town doesn't do it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I neglected to mention this. Thanks for reminding me. We are showing locations where we're still looking at the energy model, and I think that there is a very high likelihood that we're going to have solar on this building. We're showing, it's hard to see, but these little dashed lines there, little dashed rectangles show potential locations on the south side of this building where we could do solar panels.
Okay, thank you. I'll say more in public or my comments time. Would it be possible to create a graphic from Highway 9 as you come up to where the exit from Recreation Drive is now, of what this site would look like with a 35-6-foot building? That's going to probably make a difference in how I feel about that tall of a building there.
One thing to note, Robert, this is Susan Lee.
Yep.
The existing day lodge is approximately 35 feet tall.
Okay, I'm still hopeful that we can do that before this thing comes to us for final approval for my vote, because I wasn't on the commission when we did the day lodge. So I'll say more about it in comments then, but that's all I have.
If that's needed, the computer technology we have, we ought to be able to provide that sort of a view.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I can't hear the question.
I just asked if you had more questions.
No, I'm sorry. I said I was done.
Great, thank you. Ira, we'll move on to you.
I'm just gonna circle back to that solar for a minute. So if you don't put the panels up, you will pre-wire existing conditions that make provision for panels in the future?
We could certainly do that as well.
At this point.
Yeah, I haven't personally run across that, but we will talk to our electrical engineers about that.
And then I'm just gonna assume that with the energy code.
Can you be closer to the microphone? Can you be closer to the microphone, please?
I apologize. Just,
That's probably my fault.
yeah, we can't hear you and then you, I'm sorry. Just,
Did you hear me?
yeah, well, Robert wasn't, but now we can hear you. Everybody's at their microphone.
So again, with the energy code, would a building this construction lend itself to a blower door test and all the energy standards that are in the code currently?
Well, what we have to meet is, as I understand it, and, we're certainly, as our engineers are evolving the building systems, the town has adopted the 2018 International Conservation or Energy Conservation Code. And we will have to do a comm check with the building envelope and all the building systems that shows that we meet that. In addition to that, there's a provision in the code that says that we have to better there's some prescriptive methods on how we have to better the actual energy consumption of all the building systems and its performance. So we will have to meet those under the ordinance, the adopted new energy ordinance in the code, in the town code.
Right.
So those will be our guidelines.
Now, hopefully, with your equipment inside in one of the rooms, that's going to help you quite a bit. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. And it's very efficient. We don't have to have a lot of long duct runs. So there's a lot of advantages to that. We're not going to have to screen rooftop units, those
Right.
types.
And then my last comment, the hardy plank, I think that's a great material. I have found that if you get a factory color applied, it increases the warranty dramatically. So
We'll investigate that.
and
I know the colors are kind of limited, but we'll take a look at that. Thanks for the tip on that.
that's it for me.
Thanks, Sarah. Donna, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe Diane might have to answer a couple, but has your company worked with the town before? We get so many applications, and I was thinking, have we seen things from you before?
We actually did a feasibility study a while back, 2-3 years ago, something like that, for it was actually not just for Frisco, but Frisco partnered with Breckenridge and Silverthorne and Summit County to do a field house. So we did a feasibility study. It never made it to reality, but yes, we've done that work, and I don't know all of our jobs that we've done, but there's potentially other projects we've done up here as well. Megan's done about 350,000.
There was a really strange comment or statement in the staff report that said, and it was in one of, I think, your answers to some of their questions. It said on page 9, it was in regards to your request to go from 25 feet to 35 feet. And it says, quote, provides a recreational amenity that is unique and desired in Frisco. 10 feet is a recreational amenity?
I can, Diane, or I can help with that one. So we feel like the Tubing Hill is quite a unique recreational amenity that we're providing. And, oh, sorry. We feel like this is a unique recreational amenity that we provide the community and visitors. And this building is really critical to the continued operations of that facility.
And it's not the building, but it's in the section that extra 10 feet. So maybe it should be looked at in the staff report, but or in the answers, it said, in regards to the 35 feet, asking for an extra 10 feet, that the extra height, the greater height provides a recreational amenity. So I think it might have just been a mistake.
But
Okay.
yeah,
That might just be for the applicant to fine tune when they submit a new narrative, which they'll do with the next site plan. So, yeah, that was quoted from the narrative.
Okay, and then would this project, why wouldn't or would you consider adding a couple 2 studio employee apartments? I mean, the second floor, it's a big building. Is there any way to consider to add 2 employee units? The only development that the town has done anything has been Public Works. You know, thank goodness there's 2 apartments there. And it's just because of everything that's going on here, and this is a new building, just something would you consider it?
I'm gonna have to, I can design anything if somebody tells me to, but I'm gonna have to defer to the town to answer that. That's a programmatic question.
And then I do have a question about the circular emergency fire access drop-off area, where it's located. So people that are dropping their kids off there, but there's really no drop-off. Its location concerns me that it's not between the 2 buildings. So if someone's dropping off their kids at the drop-off area, but they have to go to the day lodge, what was the rationale for having that drop-off area there?
You wanna talk to that?
I would love to. Thanks for asking a fun question, Donna. Everyone, this is Megan Teston again. So the rationale for the drop-off is currently the day lodge has drop-off spaces, parking, and ADA in front of it. So our assumption was that if you are going to the day lodge, you would continue driving to the day lodge to drop off your kids. And if you were dropping off your kids here, there is a door on this side right here. So you would be able to come in, turn around safely, and then come back out or go whichever direction you'd like. So our thought was that the day lodge parking would continue to be the drop off for the day lodge, and that this would give people a safer way to drop kids off. Currently, for anyone who's been there in the midst of drop off mania, a lot of people drop off either right here or right here, and then pull U's if they need to go out the other way. So that's okay, but it's certainly not a best protocol. So our thought was to keep those separate And also to have a really safe connection for pedestrians in between those two buildings. Highlight this pedestrian connection, as you'll see in kind of the next iteration, that's not just a big blob. And kind of highlight that as a pedestrian zone. So what we're trying to do is have the space between the day lodge and the space between the slopeside hall be an area for people to be comfortable to be in and not a car zone. So
And I'm assume that it's because of like the fun club and there's 70 kids and it has a greater volume. But with that being said then, and it goes back to an original question to staff, but then directed it to the applicant. With the, since this drop-off area is closer to the tubing hill, I mean, it's a bigger area for parents to drop off, 4 kids. Will the ticketing be then moved into this new building?
sure, I can let Katie answer that. In our discussions with the fire department and in the development of this design, our thought was that this, in order to direct people that are coming to the tubing hill for the first time in the winter, this would actually be closed for emergency access or deliveries only, so that we don't end up with people dropping off tubers in the wrong location. Do you want to add to that, Katie?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
The purpose of this, we would, like Megan said, would be to close it off in the winter, directing guests to the current day lodge. The current day lodge would remain tubing, and all of those extra activities then would move
Got it.
to this new facility.
Okay.
That answers the
Okay.
question.
And then I just have, my last question is that, will the Nordic Ski Club be able to use this building since they couldn't get the Excelsior Mine building and, I mean, will they be able to use this as kind of a base?
Yes, so with this in mind, with those multi-purpose spaces being divided up, they will have the access to these spaces. The real issue we see at the Day Lodge and the Nordic Center is hard to have a public facing operation and then flip it to something more intimate or private quickly and efficiently. So this will help alleviate that stress on both the Nordic Center and the Day Lodge. So they will have access to this space. This was also why we included those changing spaces.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Donna. Andy, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I think, Megan, this is probably for you. I've got the original master plan, or at least the most recent master plan on my screen, and we have this really cool ice circle and public art and this connection across that road. There was this great space, and we saw versions of that in the winter, and we saw these beautiful renderings of how we were going to use that space. And I see this new plan, and it feels like we lost a lot of that area in where that ice rink was supposed to go and all those cool amenities that were in the master plan. Do you feel that we're still going to see a lot of that program in this blob that we're seeing on the screen?
Question. And thank you for asking it. It's something that we talked a lot about and studied. There is, one of the things that's a little bit hard with that master plan is the way the building was located there was actually over a major Excel utility, which we're really, really trying to avoid putting a building on top of that because we'd have to relocate that whole utility.
Sure.
That definitely came into play with the site plan design. The other thing that was studied was the functionality of that really cool idea of this ice rink. We looked at the size of Meadow Creek Park, which we're all familiar with. And the ice rink proposed is less than, it's about a quarter of what is currently being plowed at Meadow Creek, to kind of put it in perspective. So we felt that while it was a really awesome idea, this location was probably not the best. The other thing that kind of came into that decision that perhaps this was not the best location was that anyone who's been out here knows how awesome and intense and bright the sun is at the peninsula. And that's really bad for ice. We've talked to a few different people that have ice in different mountain areas where they have that sun issue. And if we wanted to do that, we then have to cover it to some degree, and then you lose that kind of open feel. So the whole idea is really cool. But when we started looking at the practical application of it here, it lost some of that magic. So our thought is that we're still going to have a really cool gathering space. I don't think that this is the right place for ice.
And frankly, I would agree. I always kind of questioned whether or not that much ice was going to really get used. But I love the idea of it being this sort of gathering space with the buildings all sort of oriented around it. And that space sort of extending across Recreation Way and potentially a new playground on the north side. And so I'm hoping you'll tell me that maybe we've lost the ice rink, but we haven't lost that concept of this sort of central part of the recreation village that we were sold.
Yeah,
before.
I wish you could see how big my smile is right now, but we have not lost that.
Good.
That's very much here. We also spent a lot of time even pulling tape and doing a few site visits to make sure we felt that that space and what we were leaving it is appropriate, so that if there's only a handful of people there, it doesn't feel too large, but it could also be flexible to accommodate a bigger gathering. So right now, at the tightest point, kind of from building to building, we're still at almost 100 feet. And then it opens up more as you kind of get closer to this road. So we feel that there's still a really good synergy, and this is going to be a really fun area for people to be in, and we're going to activate it, just not with ice.
Okay, that sounds great. And will we see that as part of the application
Yeah.
before, like at the next round? We'll see a little bit more detail there.
Yeah, the contract for the building was a little ahead of the plaza, but we will be showing you plaza next time.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's all I have for questions. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Sandy, Lena, questions for the applicant?
So you said that the staff is in the basement in the current building. Do you have, I guess, how many people are in the basement? Because you're creating 7 offices. I mean, I'm asking, is it like for like?
Currently in the basement, we have a break room for all seasonal staff. So that's anywhere between 15 to 30 people on a daily basis. Those people will be relocated to this new building in that new space. And then we have, let's see, 6 full-time year-round staff in the basement as well. Some of those work variable hours and schedules. They will be located into a cubicle-like space that was designated in the design. And there will be 3 full-time people from the basement going into offices. We'll also bring over our Nordic manager from the Nordic Center and give that person a real office. We are also looking to bring over some other members of the rec department from Town Hall, alleviating some of the pressures at Town Hall.
Okay, so you are bringing in more staff than is currently there.
Correct.
Okay, and what are you going to use the basement for?
Storage.
Just storage. Got it.
Bad kids.
I guess, I don't know if one of you from the town, I know it was in your staff report, but I am curious as to what have been the briefly, super briefly, like what have been the discussions with council to date? Just super quick history.
Susan, could-
Sure, I think we've taken it to town council twice, two times. I think the first initial concept, they really wanted to make sure that we had the uses and the programming for the new building correct. And so we did spend some time after that initial, and I'm sorry, I don't know the date off.
I
the
don't
top
need
of
to
my
know
head.
dates. it's fine.
So the first conversation was mostly about programming, what's happening in the new building and making sure we get that right. I think the second time we visited them, we showed them this new iteration of the 2-story plan and kind of got their preliminary preliminary blessing to move forward with the sketch plan submittal for you guys.
And just to add on to that, the first meeting we actually had with them as well, we had the tubes inside this new building. And so that became a big programming discussion because that was part of the master plan, was to include the tubes in there. And as we went through that with them and went through the discussion of how would that really work, it didn't make sense to have that much space in this new building just for the tubes. So stuff like that came out.
Got it. Thank you. And I don't know who this question is for, but it seems like that roundabout is ginormous. Is it ginormous or? Yeah.
We've been in, we've done our due diligence with the fire department. And based on the size of the truck that they anticipate using getting to the building, that is driven by their requirement. And the other thing is, Megan had mentioned this, and I just wanted to piggyback onto it. She mentioned about closing that entrance off in the wintertime to divert any errant out-of-towners to the right building. And the fire department's also accepted that as well. So we've been working the width of that connector, the size of that roundabout, where it's located on Recreation Way, the entrance to it, all that's being driven by the fire department.
Okay. Thank you. But I think I have more questions for you. Did you consider like a gender neutral bathrooms?
You added one.
Yeah, at one point we did.
But you eliminated it?
What we're actually doing right now is one of those changing rooms that you saw.
Mhm.
We're actually turning one of those into a bathroom.
Oh,
And that's it. It's not gonna have a shower. None of those rooms down below do. It's gonna have a water closet and a sink, and that will be gender neutral.
okay. Because, I mean, there's a lot of space, but kind of looks like there's a decent amount of space for those bathrooms. And I just feel like the gender specific bathrooms are gonna be a thing of the past. So I don't know. I guess just a comment and a question
This,
about that.
this one right here is going to have a toilet and a sink in it.
Just that one, not the other one?
Yes.
Can you do both?
We made a group decision not to do it that.
Okay, that's fine.
And I think that would be a kind of question more for town council to direct
Yeah,
the applicant on that. Or that.
We have thought of that, though.
okay, that's good. And then can you show, I guess it was the west elevation.
That would be this one.
Yeah, I guess, wait, there was one corner where at the seam of the corner, the materials change. Did you notice that?
That's gonna come up in comments.
Oh, okay.
It's
And I'm
gonna-
like,
It's on the last renderings you have of the perspective renderings, you can see it. Not that one has an issue right there.
Yeah.
And if you slide back one,
I
actually,
noticed that myself.
if you go back one slide too, it happens again at the entry.
Yeah, you generally don't want to just stop that material on the outside
Our
corner.
code actually doesn't allow it, so good catch. We require
Oh.
it to get wrapped around.
Turn that material.
Okay,
I think that's a very good observation.
okay.
I think that's all I have.
Andy's got one more follow-up question.
Yeah, just a quick, when you started talking about the tube storage, I got curious. Is that a building that's part of this application? Is that something we're gonna see later? Where is that?
Megan?
With the plaza.
Okay, great. That was all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. My only questions are,
Is the day lodge going to be revamped during this process, or are we going to leave it a little dilapidated and have a shiny penny
Throw it
next
in
to
there.
it?
Funny you should ask. I was just over there today and we're looking at modifications to the kitchen, as well as perhaps some minor ones to the ticketing, and adding an elevator into that storage room down there. So staff doesn't have to schlep all that stuff up and down the stairs. So those are the things that are being considered right now.
And is this the opportunity of doing this plaza, doing this building where we would connect those road to nowhere, like the underpass under the highway that goes to a street? Or that's just a really sore subject for me.
I would
It's
say
extremely
that
dangerous.
it's a little out of the realm of this building.
Okay, so that wouldn't be like, I know that because it is talking about the
Mhm.
community plan and the master plan
Yeah.
for the PRA.
That connection though is pretty far. to go
Where are
for this.
those loose ends being tied in the overall project? I mean, not just this one, but something we need to be considering when we're doing streetscapes and doing this is like, where are we doing those loose ends as well? That's a comment and not a question, but I have no other questions, so we will close the question part and move on to public comment. Now is your opportunity to speak to this agenda item. If there are members of the public that wish to speak, there are nobody here in the council chambers. So if you are online and wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand at this time. Seeing none, so I am going to close the public comment portion of this agenda item. I thank you all for your diligence and for your great presentation. At this time, we are going to move on to commissioner comments. A few things to note. Please turn to page 20 on your staff report if you have it, or if you don't. We are going to be making comments on the height, the community plan overall and how this fits into it, landscaping, parking, west facade, and the administrative adjustment and the materials. We're going to start with you, Ira. Let's hear your comments.
Mike, to the microphone. Overall, I think the building looks great. I think it's exciting. The failure to meet the interpretation of the articulation of the planes every 27 feet, I'm okay with that, because with the dormers and the roof elevations and the different roofs that are all there, I don't think that it looks like a barn. So I'm okay with that. There's just lots of elevation interest. And looking for the use of the ability to go higher than the 25 feet, I'm okay with that also, because when I put it in perspective, I mean, you're sitting on acreage. It's not like you're building next to building, blocking people's views. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't see this becoming a big development where other buildings are going to be following suit. And that really is, and I'm hoping we end up with some solar. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira. Robert, why don't we pounce to you now? You're muted, if you wouldn't mind unmuting.
Can you skip me for a moment? I'm trying to pull up the questions so that I have them in front of me. I'm kind of working.
Absolutely. We'll move on to Lena.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, the comment about the materials turning the corner. I really like the south and north elevations. And I don't know if we can pull them up, but like the one elevation that has a really long sloping roof. I don't know if that's just me. I feel like something else could break up that roof spans. And then, yeah, I guess that's the west. Yeah, it looks like the west. Thank you, Katie. I also, on that west elevation where you have that area that is like that core 10, it's like randomly right there. It doesn't, I don't know. I kind of feel like it needs to complement something else, not just kind of be like a random space with that material. And then this could also just be me, but when I look at this east elevation, the stairwell window, for some reason that looks like a church element to me. So whatever that means, you can take it or leave it. I think that this, otherwise, I mean, I like this building and the need to add another building out there. I don't have an issue with the height thing. I am concerned with the parking because I mostly go to the Nordic Center in the winter and it is really busy. At least it always seems like there's not enough parking. I have never seen it empty. So I don't know, it makes me, like, you're talking about additional employees are going to be there. You're going to talking about additional event space for private parties that could be happening both at this building and the Frisco Day Lodge. So it does seem like you're going to be generating a parking demand, at least to me. And then when I've been there, there's so many times that people are parked on the side of the road, or the parking lot in front of the Day Lodge is completely full. So I do think on the parking, I do think there should be a better plan. Either we're going to come in with some definite parking later, not just this building isn't generating any demand, because I kind of don't buy that argument. I don't really have an issue with the administrative adjustment. I mean, if you can meet that standard, that'd be great. But it does seem to me like on that west elevation, there's plenty of architectural relief. I also don't have an issue with the building materials, other than that one core 10 section that just kind of seems sort of plopped on there for no reason. And that's all I have to say. But otherwise, yeah, I don't have an issue with it. I think you've done a good job. You evolve it some more.
Thanks, Lena. Andy, comments?
Yeah, great job, you guys. I think this is really exciting to see some stuff happening out there, and I can't wait to see this and see what effect it has on the Day Lodge. I share some of Lena's concerns with the parking. I know that there's a lot of parking in that master plan. Maybe if we could get an idea of when some of that is coming along, that would be helpful to this decision. There certainly is room for it showing on the master plan. Maybe we need to add some of that sooner rather than later. As far as the height, I think, same height as the existing building or roughly the same. I'm fine with that as long as we stay under the 35 feet. Landscaping seems adequate. I know that we're going to get more as we go down the road, and I know it'll end up fine. The building articulation, I also agree. I think that, we're 2 feet away and it's behind a colonnade and under a roof. And to me, there's plenty of articulation going on there. I definitely share Lena's issue and with the materials. One other place I want to point out, Katie, can we go to the last page that have the 3 renderings? One thing in addition to the spot that Lena pointed out, which is kind of in that lower left, the view from the northeast, as I'm looking at the entry element, the view from the northwest, there's a lot of stone on the side of the entry element there, right? And it ends, and then if we go down to the lower right, we see the other side of that entry element, and there's no stone on it from the other side. So I feel like that's a really unbalanced element right now. And so I'd like to look at not just trying not to end the stone there. You can see on the lower right, there's the other side of the entry element with no stone on it. I just feel like we can do better with that entry element. We spent a lot of money on the stair tower and covering that in stone. Maybe we should put some of that money into the entry and get that to balance out a little bit better. There's a couple other spots that it's hard to tell from the renderings if there's stone ending on an outside corner, but it sounds like you're going to take another look at that. But I would also look at that entry and the stone on the entry. But as far as the materials as you're selected, I think they're fine. We just need to kind of play around with where they are on the building. I think that touches on everything. Looking forward to seeing the next phase and seeing a little bit more detail and clarification on some of the site issues. But overall, I think you guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Donna?
I am a little concerned with parking and especially like, as Alina was saying, with the employees being there, where are they gonna park? Are they gonna park at the, who knows where they park now, but to be able to maybe, if there was just to help the stress on the current parking spaces that are there, maybe there was a little area over there, but then if that circle is going to be closed in the winter. So I mean, I'm just concerned about some of the parking. I'm concerned about the accessibility, the handicap parking spots, which are next to the Day Lodge, and it's really far to get to this new building. I'm okay with no EVs since there are 2 at the Day Lodge parking lot. Bike parking move is, as stated, is a good thing. The snow storage will come back to us because that's really not addressed. I see that there's that this new building will have to have its own dumpster, and the Day Lodge has their own dumpster. Not that I want any more little buildings all over, but maybe, I mean, I don't think it would be a good idea to have another dumpster enclosure that both buildings could use, but to, you know, to try and disguise them as part of the architecture and not just an afterthought, you know, plunked outside. The west facade, I think I'm fine with that just because there is so much going on with the roof, the different roof lines there. But there was something that I read that with this, if this west facade design, if it was tweaked, it said something about that the planning commission, we wouldn't have to look at it, but it would be an administration adjustment. I'm not,
Yeah, that part of the code is if a project is an administrative review, then staff reviews it. If it's a planning commission review like this is, then planning commission reviews it.
the landscaping, the same thing. I think it's minimal, but I think it's okay. Overall, the design of the building is not really that interesting. And the materials are predictable, but I think it does blend with the Day Lodge. I'm not sure about the scale, if the scale of this building, 7,600 square feet, almost 7,600 square feet, seems a little excessive, but I guess if the town has the money to do it, then, you know, more, then I think it's great. I just hope that the funds for this building aren't, you know, being moved around, you know, and some of the projects that the town was planning on doing, like the renovation of the police department is on hold because there's no money. And then I see something like this, so whatever. But I mean, if the master plan looks great, and if the town can afford it, more power, you know, to us. And it looks great. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Robert, we'll move back to you.
Okay, somebody's rubbing their microphone or something, so I wish they'd stop that because it's hard to hear. I think that this building certainly meets the Frisco Community Plan. I have no problem with that. I still would like to see a graphic that shows this building from Highway 9 along with the current Day Lodge. I think that view is an important view to consider as we're looking at the mass of this building and the height of this building, and the way that height will impact what's going on. So I'm hopeful that they'll provide that. I share the concern about parking, and I actually think that, you know, if I were making a change in my house and coming to the town, they would force me to meet current code. I do think that Lena is absolutely correct that with new event space, we're inviting new people to come here and new events, that you could have events in all three rooms in this building, along with a full event in the Day Lodge and something going on at the Nordic Center. So I think we really ought to think about adding more parking. I am concerned about the accessible parking being as far away from this building as it is, and especially if that driveway is closed, and if you had a disabled person working in the building, they couldn't even use the accessible parking space in the circle because the road is closed. So I think that needs to be looked at. I don't have a problem with the architectural relief and the general design I like. The west facade I'm okay with, and don't really have a problem with. And I like the materials. I even like the core Cortex. So I think it's good. And the landscaping looks fine. I do think that building should be built with solar panels on it. I think if we're trying to send a message to the rest of the town, and especially if this is visible from Highway 9, and we build another building, another town building without solar panels, and then try and convince other builders to do some things as they're building buildings, I think we're sending all the wrong messages to all other builders in the community that are building. And I think the town ought to live and walk the journey that it has that it has set out in its own community plan and in its own strategic planning that we want to be a sustainable community. So I think it would be wrong to build this building without solar panels. I'm done.
Any other comments at this time?
I can't hear you.
Maybe my microphone's off. So I would have to first and foremost agree with most of my commissioners' comments, and especially Robert's. I think it's unacceptable to build a building in the middle of our recreation zone that doesn't have some aspect of sustainability, like solar panels. I'm kind of getting tired of this passive, let's push the can down the road, and then it's too expensive to build affordable housing and then too expensive to put on the solar panels or whatever it may be. I think this is a great opportunity, even if we did 50% of the maximum solar panels that you could, or a percentage, and it wasn't just retrofitted for it. I think this is the opportunity to showcase our commitment to sustainability in our recreation zone, especially. You know, like I said, I'd love to see some loose end tied. I guess this isn't the place to do it, but that's all right. In terms of the architecture, I am okay with the articulation on the west side, as well as the building height. I feel like let's not build something that we're gonna love to death and outgrow in 10 years. Let's make it last a little bit longer. Maybe if it's underutilized now, it won't always be. But I agree with Lena, it is utilized now. There isn't parking, and I find it appropriate to not add some parking element, especially accessible parking. Yes, you can go there right now and there's all the parking spots available, but you know, it's an incredibly big space. I spend a lot of time there, and it's, you know, if you have to throw something away, you got to walk a really long way. If you want to park, you got to park really far to a lot of the things you're doing. A lot of times parking isn't the issue. If you're biking, you can bike to your new place, or if you're skiing, you can ski to the thing. But when you're going to a space, I don't think this is the place where you want them to walk 500 yards or from the parking up top down in the middle of the winter. So I would like to see an element of parking on this, an element of solar, but I really like the architecture. I agree with Lena that kind of has kind of a church look. I think that there could be some modernizations added in some of the window wells or the materials in the window wells. But other than that, I think it's a really cool project. I don't feel like it's out of scale because I was standing on the site yesterday, and to be honest, the Day Lodge looks really tiny out there. It's kind of just got this big hill behind it. And I don't want to fill it up with a huge village, but I think that this is an appropriate building, and I think we need to think long-term of how long can we use it? How big does it need to be versus what can we afford right now? And those are my comments. Any other comments at this time for the applicants? Thank you so much for all your hard work. We all cherish the peninsula and agree with its statement in the staff report that it's our crown jewel, and we're excited to see this come to fruition. Thank you and best of luck. We'll see you next time. And that will close this agenda item. And we will move on to staff updates.
Oh, you Don.
All right.
Put the camera right on you.
Don't have to do that. I'm sorry? Staff updates. I actually don't have a ton since the last time we met, which is only 2 weeks ago. It's good to have a couple meetings in a row, so we reduced the number of staff updates. Biggest thing, complete streets. If you have not already, Susan, feel free to jump in. There is a survey open up on there. I think certainly we saw some comments from Donna in there, but if you haven't taken the time to do that, you can comment on Donna's comments if you'd like.
The survey that, like, when you're showing the different options, the first option, like what it is today, shows like 6 cars in it. And by the time you get to the cream of the crop option, there's 0 cars in the like, where there was cars parked, there's like a sidewalk there now. And so I noticed that this not kind of, I don't know if you can do anything about that, but that was gonna be one of my comments, that like, well, where were the cars that were in this 6 spots? That now is a sidewalk, was that actually designated? correctly? There's-
Yeah, but that's a good comment that, okay, where are the cars now gonna park?
Yeah, because it's just
you
like
know.
the better it gets, it seems like there's no cars. And I'm like, well, there's no cars.
I think that's a,
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a great comment and our consultant needs to hear that sort of thing, just so they make sure that the graphics match what it's going to be. So, yeah, so please do make those comments. So if you haven't had the chance, do it. It's up for another week and a half.
Till Halloween, it'll come down on Halloween, so if you get a
Today
chance.
it went back and
Good
added
online.
another
And
comment, 'cause they
definitely
also-
comment on Donna's comments and make, but be nice, be civil.
I tried to be nice.
So that's Complete Streets. It's moving along really well. Other things, I honestly don't really have a lot, but I'm certainly able and willing to answer any questions you had. There's a lot of great comments on solar on this particular project, and I think that is going to be a continued goal for us as well. So, Donna?
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
So I was told that the lot on Highway 9 in Granite, where Larry was gonna do something, was sold.
I have heard rumors, but I have not seen certainly any confirmation on any transaction. I've heard a rumor.
High developers here that were trying to buy it, and I think the person who was bringing the finances didn't have the finances.
So-
Yeah, for the summer, I don't think it came.
Chelsea, stay closer to the microphone, please.
She asked about the lot, and I was under the impression that it was under contract, but the funds did not arrive, so that it was never actually transferred, and Larry Feldman still owns that.
Okay. And then,
Thank you.
In regards to parklets and when Woods Rest had their tent permit for 6 months at a time, and then COVID hit and, things sort of went sideways. Is that tent coming down? Because if we were doing the 6 months and the 6 months, it's usually around November sometime, or, early November.
Collection, from what I heard and will look, is that they started as an outdoor commercial establishment, which only permitted 6 months a year, but somehow then they got out of the OCE with the town, and that it wasn't on a 6-month extension or contract anymore through an OCE.
Yeah, and I'll have to check into that. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, there was some exceptions granted by the fire department as a temporary structure on the length of time that could be up during COVID. So I'll have to check in with them and see if that's still
Now that
an
things
issue.
are Sort of getting back to normal. I was wondering if it was gonna go back to the same 6-month permit schedule.
I'll have to check
Is
on that.
there any update on the status of Alpine Inn being converted to employee housing?
That is a project that the county took on back in June or July, I believe. We went through and did our approvals from the planning and building side for the town of Frisco. I honestly have not followed up with it because the town or the county said this is something that they're leasing out. I have not heard how successful they are, at least in the last couple of months. So I'll check in with
Yeah, because you see the
them
activity
on that.
going on, the old Baymont, and now that, it's painted and. Now that it's all white? No, it's not white, it is gray, it's a light
Town
gray.
code, we verified.
Well, there's a couple houses being painted on Frisco Street too, and I'm like, well, those are pretty white. Does anybody have to?
But they, might be,
Yeah.
but that building definitely is, it's a
It
light,
looks
it's a
clean.
light gray.
It looks cleaner, but it reminds me very much of Walmart's look, where you're kind of like, whoa, that's really bright against all of the kind of other browns we see.
And then there, my last kind of
improvement.
question is there anything in the code about, there's a building on Main Street that, that has 4 gigantic American flags on the front of their building? And it's Calisco. I was just wondering, it's like 4, 2 are flat and 2 are out. It's a little overkill. I was just wondering if that,
Have to check into our sign code, but I believe
American
flag is exempt, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Many and as big as you want, and as high as you want.
Main Street and
Winter
Summit
Plaza.
Boulevard.
What?
It's actually been better. The
Oh.
thrift stores, like a little. I just wanted to throw in a wrench. for
Yeah,
you.
I had to back
Can
out.
we
of there
stay
both of them
in the
because I was at
microphones?
Carroll Gas and I had to back out and I was like,
Oh,
"Argh."
noted, noted.
So Robert again requested that you lean in when you're making comments, but certainly the thrift inn, did I hear you say it is better or it is
I don't know,
not?
I don't know. It's still, maybe I'm just, I'm
It may have been
desensitized.
Result of construction that the access is a little more constricted as well. So I guess we'll continue to observe and monitor that situation over there.
And the GAP project's just about wrapped up?
It is just about wrapped up.
I saw the
Sign on
sidewalks
Majesty.
connected.
That's
Oh.
always gotta love it when they
Oh,
Majesty.
It
Oh,
seems
I
like they, wait, I can ask 2 questions. It seems like they did something to the timing of the signal. Do you know if they
So
did? 'Cause-
it was really extended. They had a really long stop on Main turning onto the highway because of the highway backups. They wanted to make sure they had traffic moving through the intersection north and southbound on Highway 9. They are going to change that back once it's
Good.
completely done, but I don't know what the final timing is or when they're going to make that change.
Yeah, because it's been backing up on Main Street, like way, okay.
Yeah.
And the other question I have is, I've been meaning to ask this for a while. There's a it looks like a street light that is in between like Main Street and say School Road, but there's one that's like out and it's like a really, it's noticeably darker in that one
Okay.
section. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I'm not aware of it, but certainly.
I mean, because yeah, it's been out. I think it's been out for a long time. and
Is that
even-
about where 10 Mile Creek goes under the highway, or is it in that area?
It's close to Main Street,
Okay.
kind of like where that property that's like that
Dick Boylan's.
compound, yeah,
Okay.
like roughly there.
Huh.
Because it's like,
Are you talking about Walter Byron?
no,
Oh. No, it's not.
it's on Summit Boulevard, but like there's like light, and all of a sudden it's like a super dark stretch.
It's a pretty dark town in general.
Which is not a bad
I
thing.
like it. I like it.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's just a weird, it's just a weird, like, why do I have to feel like I have to turn my,
But if it's a regular street light, like for instance, there was the one right at Walter Byron Park entrance, 7884. I know, like, I mean, and I called them up and they replaced it by the next day.
And this one might be trickier, it's just probably see that, but.
Yeah.
it's probably CDOT and I don't.
We'll look into it. So, yeah.
If it's Excel, street, if it's an Excel light, then you can call up Excel and tell them where it's at. And like I said, I was impressed they came out the next day and because it was really dark where the pedestrian walkway is going into Walter Byron Park. So it's like, the light should be there. So boom, it was there.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Is there connectivity going to happen on my favorite subject, where the new stage stop is on 8th or 7th there?
Oh.
There's a sidewalk that stops.
Yeah, that's nice new sidewalk. I didn't even know it was going in. So,
And then you go off of the Gap project and it turns around Boulevard Bend, a sidewalk that
Mhm.
just stops.
Yeah.
Are there plans for either of those sidewalks to go anywhere?
get with Public Works because I noticed the same thing, especially up at coming off the roundabout
Yeah,
where it
it's
just stops.
So weird. And it's like, I mean, you could have coordinated with Water Tower maybe to just do. Gift them 5 feet to connect up to it or something.
That work was actually in the town right of way and where where the sidewalk stops coming off the highway, off the roundabout, that's the extent of the CDOT project. So there's some limitations there. I suspect that it'll be in our Public Works capital improvements plan in order to get that extended, but probably not till next year.
Could that potentially tie into the streetscapes? Because at least 7th Avenue is in that little streetscape.
Yeah, and honestly, I suspect that as we see new traffic patterns coming off the highway through that roundabout, we're gonna have to take a pretty close look at that intersection because people come off it at a pretty good speed. So,
Yeah.
I
that,
love the new station. It looks beautiful.
It's kind of scary. It's kind of scary how fast people come off of that roundabout. And
Oh, yeah.
if you're coming off of, if you're going south and then east, to get on the highway, it can be scary.
Yeah, I'm a little, I mean, one great thing about the GAP project is it took the people that were coming off the highway onto Main Street at 35 miles an hour, they're out of the equation. But now I'm a little concerned that that's just happening up at the roundabout instead. So yeah, we'll continue to monitor that, I think.
Any other updates?
Quick updates on Rainbow Court and Centura housing project.
Housing project, they had submitted a building permit for the first two buildings back in August. Then they withdrew the permits. So we have reached out to them so that they could make sure we get a re-veg bond in place after the demo work. But we have heard from them that they intend to resubmit and they do intend to break ground in the spring, but they do not have a current building permit submittal.
They intend to resubmit their building permit. They're not coming back to a sketch plan or anything.
Aware of, no.
What about Rainbow Court?
Rainbow Court is, that is a challenging situation right now. We are waiting for a engineering plan from the Rainbow Court property owners in order on how they're going to mitigate and remediate the over excavation of their property as well as the adjacent property to make sure that the Hotel Frisco property is protected.
Footings?
They excavated all the way to the foundation wall and the shallow footing. So, so we, again, both the Hotel Frisco as well as Rainbow Court, they have engineering reports, geotechnical and civil or structural that are coming together. And ultimately those two parties will have to come up with a plan that is agreeable to both parties in order to proceed with that repair or that remediation.
But we get to keep the hole for a while.
Yep, all winter. Ice
I'm counting.
On that note, though, the Hotel Frisco looks really good.
I'm sorry?
You like the painting?
Yeah, the Hotel Frisco looks really good.
It does,
Yeah.
except for that one spot on the east facade where excavator hit it.
Seen that, but like, obviously the siding needed some love.
They're so exposed.
Yeah. No, they did I will say the Hotel Frisco did a really nice job updating and refinishing their exterior. So there was a welcome change. So.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to extend the meeting, and I think this is Andy's project, but the property right next to the Moose Jaw, I think is been bought.
It has.
And it, huh?
Our developer lost that one.
Really? Oh. But
Katie,
so
I think
there-
might have an update on that one.
Establishment for that lot for somebody who took the log cabin name to sell breakfast burritos there.
Oh, good.
At this
So,
point,
so
we
they're
don't
not,
have any applications for new development on that property.
so the building in the back is not,
Mhm.
I thought the building in the back was gonna get torn down,
As
but I
of
guess
now,
it's
there's
not.
no plan.
Well, that's
For that
good,
property.
because
Probably
there's
will
lots of
be.
people that live there.
There's 6 units in there, right?
I don't know.
Yes.
Keeping it for now based on the intel from I got from the realtor. who helped
Can
me.
you move in closer to the mic?
Sorry, I'm yelling at everybody else and then I don't do it. I've heard rumors, just rumors that they were gonna keep it for a while, is all I know.
Good, because certainly, as we see with a lot of our projects, we saw it at our last meeting. That was a single family residence that's getting removed. That had been a previous local residence that's being removed, and it'll be replaced by 5 townhomes that probably none of them will be local residents.
No.
And so certainly it's very good to hear that at least that one property for at least the time being is remaining as rental units.
Cool.
Any other questions, updates?
Was anything said about the Foods Hotel? I know you talked about.
No.
So nothing was said.
No, just
with-
about the, I just asked about the tent.
Oh,
but
well,
yeah.
what about the hotel? Anything there?
Continuing to move through, back in March, they had an announcement that they're working with Marriott to do some branding on that. Marriott's branding process is very specific and their design approval is a very specific process. So the design team has been working through that. They give town staff a monthly update on their progress on that. We are still anticipating that we will see building permit applications for that this winter. And my understanding is they still intend to break ground in the spring. They are, yeah, they're, it's August of 2022, I believe.
But you know, and what's a shame about that is that, and the code used to have something in there when I first got on planning that no chain could be on Main Street. Like someone wanted to have a Starbucks, no, they wouldn't let them. Someone wanted this, no. So I think it's sad that gonna be Marriott, and I don't understand really why that was taken out of the code.
I don't know if the brand name is actually gonna be Marriott. I think it's gonna have a different name. I think it's actually gonna be Foots Rest by AC,
By Marriott.
by Marriott or something like that.
Heritage Collection.
Yeah, like Bon Boy, Bon Air.
Correct. So yeah, so I don't know. But again, we don't have all of the details on that. We'll continue to see that. And just to clarify one thing, their original expiration was going to be August of 2021. Per the code, I was able to grant, or I was asked to, and per the code, I did grant a 1-year administrative extension of that site plan approval. So it now is extended till August of 2022.
Extended again, or is it just the 1 year?
Future extensions would come back to the planning commission or the original review body, which in this case is the planning commission.
No meeting next time, it looks like.
I'm sorry,
No meeting.
no meeting in November.
And Don, when are you gonna get Katie some help? She's been slaving away over here all by herself for like a couple of weeks now.
Susan, Cheryl?
Well, you're presenting everything. Nobody else?
Susan's been doing all the long range planning that you don't see.
Okay.
And acting as a staff representative on projects like you saw tonight. So it's one of those challenges because the town is doing a number of projects where the town is the applicant. We really do need to have, just to have that appearance of some sort of separation and transparency. Susan works as the applicant a lot of times, and Katie will act as the review agent on it. So we do have that transparency where Susan's not reviewing her own work, because that would be weird.
But no plans to fill Bill's desk.
I'm sorry?
No plans to fill Bill's desk.
There is definitely a plan to fill Bill's desk. Again, it's, as everybody is finding, it's really difficult to hire and refill positions at this point in time.
Lucky to have Wonder Women.
Yes, I am.
Can you move in, please?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All
right.
I did also forget to mention that the promenade, when somebody mentioned parklets, there is going to be a discussion by town council at the promenade about the promenade at their work session this coming Tuesday on whether or not it is going to continue for future years.
They said, yeah, coming back.
Well,
Back in the same form or in the new form?
the barbecue discussion by council